Okay, we see the attendees rolling in. Great, let's get started. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to our global audience. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Sarah Basseri, and I am the Chief Revenue Officer at BioMakers. Before we get started, just wanted to go over a couple of housekeeping items. On your screens, you do have a question panel. Please enter your questions in throughout the webinar. You don't have to wait until the end. And we'll make sure we either answer them during the webinar. We have dedicated some time at the end. We'll get to all the questions. And if you don't get to your question, we'll make sure we'll respond through an email. And the second point is the housekeeping items will be that this webinar is recorded, and a link to the recording will be shared with you within the next 24 hours or so. Now, in terms of the agenda, we'll begin by exploring some of the pressing global challenges that are impacting the CPGs and agri-businesses and you on this call today, highlighting the growing demand and expectations for the industry to address some of these critical issues through sustainable practices. We will then go on to examining some of the innovative tools and technologies that are empowering the CPGs and agribusinesses to achieve their sustainability objectives. And finally, we'll share some case studies demonstrating how companies are strategically planning, benchmarking, and successfully meeting their sustainability goals. Now, before we get started, I would love to ask our esteemed panelists to introduce themselves, starting with the BioMakers advisors, Dan Burdett and Bea Arrieta.
Hey, Sarah, colleagues, and everyone hearing this conversation. Thank you for having me here. I am Beatriz Arrieta. Please call me Bea. I am from Colombia. I'm located in Bogota, and I am an agronomist, and I worked with Bayer in the agribusiness for 21 years, starting from regulatory affairs and then going into marketing, into market development. And my last years with the company, I developed strategic relationships with CPG companies to improve the way of producing food and giving the farmers the possibility to really go into better markets thanks to the sustainable and regenerative agricultural practices implemented. I work now as a consultant for BioMakers based on the work I have done with Bayer. So thank you so much for having me here.
Thanks, Bea. It's good to work with you on this project. Hello, everyone. My name is Dan Burdett. I have been working in agriculture my entire career. I studied in school biology and soil science and agronomy. And my first jobs out of university were managing farm supply stores where farmers were my customers. And we sold them all of their inputs, you know, seeds and crop protection and agronomic advice. I was then recruited away by one of the seed companies, and I became the commercial head for one of the major brands in corn and soybean country here in the US. That's a company that ultimately became part of Syngenta. And at that time, I stepped over and I led the vegetable seeds division in North America for a number of years. And in that role, really got to understand the whole value chain, particularly in the produce industry, and to work up and down the value chain. And then I stepped over and I was leading marketing for crop protection and seed products in the US for Syngenta. And the last role I had in Syngenta was leading their digital agriculture team globally. I stepped out of Syngenta a few years ago, and I've just joined a few companies, either as a board member or an advisor. And I've carefully selected companies that I think are doing really impactful work. with new technology, and I was really pleased to have the opportunity to join BioMakers, because this whole area about soil and soil health, I think, is critical for all of us globally. And so I was pleased to join as an advisor and happy to share some of my perspectives with you here today. Thank you, Sarah.
And I am Jacob Parnell. I am an agronomist here at BioMakers, and I have a background in soil science, mostly looking at the microbiology. I have been involved with kind of academia. I did some work at Utah State, and then some other work here at North Carolina State University on research in kind of plant microbe interactions. I was working in industry for several years here in the Research Triangle area, and then I was able to go and spend a couple years working with the UN, with the Food and Agriculture Organization, in their Global Soil Partnership that kind of really focuses on the threats to soil health, and kind of as a soil biodiversity specialist, so kind of seeing that side of a lot of these sustainable development goals, kind of how they're developed, how they're kind of we work with those, and then I guess it's been just over a year. I came back to BioMakers, and I'm happy to kind of be on the implementation side of this, on kind of where the rubber really hits the road, kind of where the action is taking place. And so I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to be involved with kind of this technology.
Thank you again to the three of you for joining us today. We have a lot to cover, so I will just quickly go over just a couple of slides about who we are, and then we'll start the discussion. And so BioMakers was started by Adrienne Ferrero and Alberto Acedo, childhood friends, and they had a dream to recover soil health globally, and they got started back in 2015 in California. And their journey was and they got started by building the most powerful tool that helps us understand and communicate with the soil today. Now, a decade later, BioMakers has become a global leader, setting the standard for soil health with our technology, which is called BeCrop. We have built the largest global soil database, and with the help of AI and machine learning, we provide actionable insights to the industry. To date, we have verified over 400 ag input products and management practices. We have worked with 2,000 plus customers across 6 continents, and have impacted thousands of farmers and helping them recover their soil health. The pins that you see on the map showcases our labs and offices, and this is how we are able to support clients with their sustainability initiatives. Just like many of you on this call, we at BioMakers also measure our impact, and we help many of our organizations that you see on this slide also achieve their sustainability goals with our BeCrop technology. We'll cover some case studies later on during this webinar, where it will include some of these logos here, and also provide more information about what BeCrop technology is. But I think for now, what I would love to do is talk about some of the alarming stats that I am sure everyone on this call is aware of. We have lost 1/3 of our soil globally, and it takes about a decade to fully recover soil health. So we need to start paying attention to the 1/3 that we've already lost, and how much we need to do to ensure that we recover it, because we do have, and we expect to have, about 10 million people joining us by 2050, which means increasing food demand by 50 to 60%. We understand that agriculture. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I just jump in here really quick, Sarah? I just want to point out that 1/3 number is about 10 years old now. There are reports coming out of Europe where they're saying about 60% of their soils are degraded. And so it's not like it's taken it's been millennia in losing that 1/3. It's happening right now.
Absolutely. I mean, looking at it, the stats, I think we can all agree the importance of collaboration across the entire agricultural value chain. We need to drive environmental and economic impact. Now we have Dan and Bea on this call with decades of experience. You guys have both played an essential part in moving the needle to a more sustainable world. I'm hoping you can share your perspective on the challenges that you see agribusinesses and CPGs facing today. Maybe Dan, you could talk to us a little bit about, where this all gets started, which is soil health.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I think I have to start with, I have a friend that teases me a lot about my interest in what he calls dirt. And, he talks about farmland as dirt. And I always jump in and say, no, it's not dirt, it's soil. Dirt is what you wash off of your jeans. Dirt's what gets under your fingernails. Soil is a living, breathing, biome that we all need to understand. And, consider the next time you see a picture of the earth, consider, if you will, that approximately 70% of the surface of the earth is covered in water, and 25% or so is land, and there's about 10% of the earth's surface which is considered cropland, and a lot of that is pastures. And really the good arable farmland is less than 5% of the earth's surface. And then also consider that the average topsoil is only 5 or 10 inches deep. And that little sliver of topsoil sustains all life on Earth. And, we all need to better understand this topsoil, and we need to learn how to sustain and nurture that valuable resource. It's actually imperative. When I was young, and in the grand scheme of things, that wasn't so long ago, there was no real talk about the environment or about sustainability or regenerative practices or any of those terms. And the people that did use those kind of terms were called tree huggers and hippies. And, the older I get, I think the more concerned I am about the future world that my son and my grandkids might live in. And I know I'm not alone. So we know that there's a tremendous awareness about our shrinking natural resources and the environmental impact of many industries, including farming. We certainly here in the US are becoming conscious consumers. Most shoppers are now well aware of BeCrop and fair trade certifications. Ethical consumption is really going mainstream. And this growing demand for more sustainable products has encouraged some of the food companies to adopt more ethical and sustainable sourcing of their ingredients. And that's great, because when there's a business impact, then true potential for improvement is unlocked. And, the concept of conscious capitalism is a good thing, but there needs to be value creation all along the value chain. And food companies have come to realize that the greatest impact of their sourcing for sustainability is at the farm. And it all begins with the soil. And we just need to really ground ourselves that soil is a biological living thing. It sustains all life. It's the foundation of all of our food systems. And the more we can protect it, the more we sustain the long-term health of our agricultural ecosystem. And for this conversation, any sustainability metric needs to start with a baseline understanding of soil health. And so I'm just happy to join the conversation, and I'm thrilled that you invited me. So
Thank you, Dan. Absolutely. I think the two key takeaways, soil health, there's an urgent need to understand it. We need to improve it. We need to understand how soil works, what it needs, communicate with it, and then supporting farmers. Obviously, with that education and some of the rising even input costs that is impacting farmers. Bia, what are your thoughts, especially when it comes to all the regulatory pressures? And I know you are a huge advocate for some sort of a standard when it comes to soil health. Hoping you can share some of your perspective with us.
Thanks. I totally agree with you then, because I'm happy and I love that the people is aware now about sustainability, and many companies are talking about sustainability, and they have a very good web pages with the sustainable goals, and very nice PowerPoint presentations talking about the goals and the numbers each one of them um, has established. But going into the field is really a challenge. And I also agree with you that soil is the base, because soil is supporting the food production. And we need to understand, as technicians, as advisors, as um, people that is working in crop protection companies, all of us need to understand deeply what is happening in the soil. And this kind of companies, the crop protection companies, has very good solutions for the phytosanitary problems. But all the people, all the chain needs to really understand what is happening in the soil, and not just but to know. We need to measure and we need data to really take better decisions, and having this opportunity of measuring and making business at the same time. And I think this is the I found that the BeCrop tool is really driving these two parts of the chain into the reality of the sustainability. The farmers need to take decisions based on data, and the facility and the data that we could build through BeCrop and making these maps, the regional maps that we are able to produce, is really a tool for the small farmer, for the agro-exporter, for the CPG companies to really go into this process of passing from the PowerPoint to the field. And having the data, I think, is the most important here. And um, from my experience working with producers, banana producers, potato producers, coffee producers, all of them are able to implement the practices and going into the regenerative agriculture way. But definitely, I think they need data to support the decisions. And also, we need to think about that. Of course, it has a cost to have this data. So for building the data, we need partnerships, and we cannot do it alone. So the CPG companies, the crop protection companies, the farmers, and the traders, we need all the chain involved really to have the regenerative agriculture as a very good result, and as an answer from this request from the final consumers that are always thinking about and pushing the chain into have more sustainable food. And we need really to have data and to explain how is this big uh, task to produce food. So we need to be really aligned with the producing data and to have decisions made from data, and not just to sell more or something like that.
Totally agree with you, Bia. And industry collaboration is obviously key, and we can't just place it on the farmers, all the responsibility of recovering that soil health. You both come from global manufacturers, Syngenta and Bayer, where we've done tons of work together with biomakers. And our BeCrop technology and analyzing some of that data. And you both talk a lot about backing your claims with real data or giving real data to farmers. Dan, can you talk to us a little bit about your past work with Syngenta or just experience with ag input manufacturers, and how are they using that data and why should they be using that data?
Well, yeah, let me provide some context. So my whole career has been, either in the seeds business or in the crop protection industry. And if you think about a crop protection company, these are companies that are developing herbicides and insecticides and fungicides. The R&D in those organizations have been focused historically on using small molecule chemistry to develop active ingredients that would eventually turn into commercial pesticides. And really over the past few decades, we've seen a lot of pushback from consumers in the global market challenging the use of pesticides. And there have been very few new active ingredients come to market in the last several years. And those that do come through the R&D pipeline are under very increased scrutiny from the regulators and society in general. And gaining approval for commercialization has become very time consuming and extremely expensive. And these companies have responded in several proactive ways. Firstly, they're finding really smart ways to reformulate and recommend their current portfolio products in ways that improve the efficiency and efficacy for farmer value. They also have just really streamlined their small molecule active ingredient discovery into very focused initiatives that have a clear line of sight on the regulatory process, but are also filling a very specific need in the marketplace. And thirdly, I would say they're investing a lot in developing data-driven insights, either via what we call digital ag or precision application technologies that can inform the use of pesticides so that they're only used if, when, and precisely when they're needed. And, maybe more relevant for this conversation is the big crop protection companies and many ag tech startups are developing biological-based products that can be used as biopesticides, biofertilizer, biostimulants, and there's tremendous hope for these products, as evidenced by the billions of dollars that are going into this space. But biological products often have multiple modes of action, and by their very nature, they're very sensitive to the environment in which they're used. And the efficacy of these products can be affected by the temperature, the humidity, the water quality, other tank mix products, and certainly the soil microbiome, as well as the life cycle of the pest itself. So these products are gaining traction in the market, but honestly, the product performance on the farm has been very unpredictable. So companies like Bayer, Corteva, Syngenta, and others have partnered with biomakers during the new development phase to gain vital insights into the soil environment, the soil microbiome, that might actually affect these products. And this is really robust, data-driven science that validates the claims of these biopesticides, ensuring reliable and predictable, and keyword predictable, outcomes for the farmer. And with the knowledge of the soil microbiome, this approach has several benefits. I would say it helps the companies optimize their formulations and their recommendations for rate per acre and the timing of the applications. It helps improve the predictability of the desired outcome. And honestly, this is a great competitive advantage given the current state of performance with biopesticides. And ensuring that product efficacy goes a long way in fostering farmer confidence in this new line of products. But I think ultimately co-development between biomakers and the crop protection industry helps inform the decision of if, when, and where I need to use a pesticide and the likelihood of a satisfactory outcome. So it's a really important collaboration that should yield really significant benefits ultimately for the growers. And I think Jacob's going to explain more about the BeCrop test later, so that'll be helpful.
Yeah, and I mentioned earlier we've trialed over 400 products and management practices. We've done tons of work with Syngenta, tons of work with Bayer, and published some of that work. Yeah. One thing we have realized, and we really appreciate with the ag input manufacturers and our partners, is that everyone knows the product does work, but not on every single soil or every single crop type. The important part is to figure out exactly what soil it's meant for, what kind of crop it's meant for, what kind of environments these products are meant for, so that we can continuously build that trust with the farmers, give them the products that they actually need, and ensure that it works. And I think we're grateful for all the research and development manufacturers are doing, besides the fact that it obviously gives them, like you said, Dan, obviously a competitive advantage.
Yeah.
But a lot of these large organizations are ensuring that what they're putting in front of farmers will work 100% of the time, and we sort of get rid of that snake oil effect that most products have gotten in the past, or some products have gotten in the past. Be curious to hear from you, and obviously your experience at Bayer and some of your work with the CPGs and all the support you've given them also on the sustainability side, planning some of those projects and partnerships.
I think that some years ago, the approach of Bayer to the farmers, of course, was based on the control of pests and weeds and fungus, but it turned more into customer centricity. And when you go deep into these needs from the farmer, it is not just about controlling and having a good control of phytosanitary problems. It goes also into what requirements should the grower fulfill to go or to maintain into the market. And now that Dan was explaining, I remember that for the banana growers, there is a huge challenge regarding the replacement of mancozeb. And companies are really focused on trying to implement biological products to replace the applications of mancozeb. And until now, it is very difficult. And the producers are really focused on reducing the dependence on mancozeb, but until now, they have no replacement. And companies are going into the same line of the grower, trying to help him to maintain the market based on the requirements of the traders and the CPGs companies. So I think 5 or 6 years ago, these companies started talking about regenerative agriculture. And the goal of Bayer is today still to increase the implementation of the practices that brings the regenerative agriculture as a real model of production. And going into this into this field, it's so important to, of course, start from the soil, because I remember that in one pilot we were developing an aerial application in bananas, an aerial application of one product really had a very, very different development of the soil microbiome. So when you apply aerially in bananas with a very, very low amount of water, you have an impact on the soil. So this is very important to understand. when companies are developing all the solutions and think about that it is not just about efficacy or how um, to sell more products to a farmer. It's really to understand the agro-environmental of the crop that is developing there. And of course, the CPG companies are requesting because the final consumers are making pressure and um, uh, just asking for this kind of products that really comes with sustainable production. And it is not more like talking about that I am doing sustainable. We need to go with the farmers in this traceability process of production. Because if they don't have this traceability, the final consumer will not know what is the farmer doing. And the company, the CPG company as Nestle, as Mars, as or the traders as Greenyard, and these big companies, they will not have the stories, real stories to tell to the final consumers that they are really doing the work with the farmers. So always start with the farmers. And I think the task of the farmer of producing not just enough in quantity food, they also need to look at the quality. And when you have a better soil health, the quality of the harvest will be better, and all the population will be happy with the food we are producing. But we need to really go with the farmer, not just thinking about this part of the efficacy and the business as it is in the crop protection companies. I think uh, these companies need to look for this kind of needs and pain points from the farmer, that is the marketing of the food. And if they don't go into the sustainable regenerative agriculture, that if they don't have indicators to show that they are really doing well, they will not maintain in the market, because the pressure is very, very hard right now.
Absolutely. I went to an event probably 5 years ago where we continuously talked about sustainability and meeting, government regulations, laws that are coming down the pipeline by 2030. Now some are 2040 and some are now 2050. And companies continuously talking about how do we get started, where do we get started? And a lot of great organizations have come up with actual sort of checklists or ways of understanding your sustainability and measuring your impact. Unfortunately, like many of you have mentioned during this call, during this webinar, that's great, but what is the ultimate impact? How are we supporting the farmers? If they're just having a checklist to go through, it's great to start, but where's the data? What is it telling them? Is it actually giving them a baseline? Is it helping them to do better? And I think this is a great segment to get into, sustainability reporting on a checklist for farmers gets a little actionable feedback to farmers. And currently why these tools are falling short is that there's only one way of reporting system. So the farmer is telling us what they're doing on the field, and they're going through that checklist. And again, that checklist applies to everyone. So you could be a farmer in Colombia, you could be a farmer in California, you could be a farmer in Australia, and that checklist applies to every single farmer, and the questions are very similar. It focuses on actions, not so much outcomes. So these are the actions you have today, but what is the impact of that outcome on your farm? And ultimately, it leads to no value for the farmer. And these checklists, again, like I mentioned, is sort of a one-size-fits-all sustainability checklist. And it's not just us sort of communicating this today. The World Economic Forum came out and recently with a report talking about the fact that we can't just be focusing on checklists. We need to look at outcomes. We need to be able to measure those outcomes. And what better time to start today when we're still at the very early onsets of trying to come up with our sustainability goals and plans, back them up with data. Because eventually we're going to get to a place to say, okay, this is where we're at 5 years ago. How are we doing today? And if you haven't been measuring it and you haven't gone that baseline, you haven't been benchmarking, how do you know how you're doing and how are you going to measure all of that? So hopefully we can move from this checklist to more of an outcome. It needs to go hand in hand, and this is where our technology is playing a role into giving you the outcomes and backing it with science, hoping that I can now have our Dr. Jacob Bernal, head of agronomy at BioMakers, tell us a little bit about the technology, and then we'll go into a little bit of case studies.
Yeah, I'm gonna try and keep it at a 10,000-foot view. If anybody does have questions that they want to go into more detail with this, reach out to us and let us know. We can set up a call to really dig into the details. But what we do is we look at the microbiome. We've been talking a lot about the microbiome. There's a lot of exciting information that's coming out that really suggests that the microbes, both in human health and animal health and in planetary health, are great indicators of what is going on. And so that's essentially what we're doing. We extract the DNA from the soil and we sequence the DNA of all the microorganisms that are there. And then what we're able to do is we're kind of able to piece together what is the kind of the diagnostic. What is the biology telling us about this soil? How healthy is it? What are some of the things that it might be missing? What are some of the strengths of the soil? And so we're able to get solid numbers. It's not just kind of saying, it's looking good, or we're able to put a number to it. And so we've done this. We have well over 100,000 samples that we've collected. We've extracted the DNA. We've sequenced from, Sarah was mentioning all of the different crops, different areas of the world. And so we have this huge database that we're able to look at, and we're able to start to kind of compare all of these different soils. We also have a digital platform. So microbiome information can be rather complex, and we want to simplify it, as I mentioned, down to numbers that are pertinent, that are relevant to sustainability, that are relevant to agriculture. And so we're not just going to throw out these giant lists of all of the different organisms that we found, but we're going to distill it down to say, for example, with nitrogen cycling, we're going to give you a number, and this is what it looks like. And then, so from that platform where you can go in and you can say, I want to look at my soil, my results, you can go in and we can say, yeah, your nitrogen score for these microbes is showing that it's a little bit lower than you would like to expect. And so here's some ideas of what you can do to boost that. It could be looking at biodiversity. We could be looking at soil quality. We could be looking at soil biosustainability. So there are all of these different, we have, I think, 60 plus different metrics that we can look at that'll tell you kind of what is the health of that soil. And not only what is the health of it, but maybe some ideas on how to move that number, how to improve that number. So I think if we go to the next slide, the great thing about this is that we can use it in a whole bunch of different situations. So, for example, we can work with product manufacturers. Bea and Dan were just mentioning that some of the issues with biologicals is sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. We several years ago we wrote a paper about when I was in industry about how all of the challenges that you have from taking a biological product that works great in the greenhouse, and then all of the things that happen between the greenhouse and taking it out to the field. All of the different challenges and the ways that it can fail. And so one of the things that we can do is we can look at what do these products actually do when you take it out to the field. As Dan was mentioning, the microbiome plays a huge role, humidity, temperature, all of these different things are going to play a huge role in how that biological product works in the field. And so we're able to take that and we're able to say, this is what a product actually does in the field. And that has two great advantages. One is it tells the manufacturer, this is what your product is actually doing out in the field. But it also tells the grower, will this product work in your field? You have a similar biology, or you have similar conditions to what we've seen where it actually does move that nitrogen cycle, for example. And so if you have a low nitrogen cycle, you can say, well, here's a product that, you know, we feel confident will actually work to move that nitrogen cycling of the microbiome in your field. And so eventually, you know, ultimately what we're looking for is we're looking for growers that will be able to improve their sustainability without having that deficit on that yield. There's a lot of concern out there of growers that are saying, you know, as I transition away from, you know, a lot of these pesticides and things that I've been using, I'm going to start to see a drop in yield. I'm going to see a drop in my profits, and we want to avoid that as much as possible. And so we're hoping that we can be able to look at some of these and say, here are some products that will actually work. These will kind of filter down or up through kind of that supply chain resiliency to be able to make sure that as we're moving to more sustainable practices, more sustainable products, you know, more sustainable agriculture, that we're not really adversely impacting that supply chain. And ultimately we are benefiting the soil, improving soil health. Sarah was talking about that 1/3 to 60% of the soils that are already degraded. We're hoping to help recover those. We're improving the carbon within the soils, improving the soil health, but mostly we're able to give it a number. We're able to put a number associated with that. There are a lot of issues associated with, right now, a lot of the goals are activity-based, as Sarah already mentioned, where it's like, okay, if you are doing reduced till agriculture, you can check this box and say that you're sustainable. And the question becomes, is that really sustainable? You know, where are the numbers? What's the outcome of that reduced till agriculture? And that's what we don't have. And that disconnect between what we're reporting and what's actually happening is causing a lot of problems right now. So I think if we go to the next slide, excuse me. So this is the SAI, this one of the key sustainability platforms, and I love this. I love that we have these sustainability platforms, that we are moving in this direction. And so I've pulled out quite a few of the activities that are associated with each one of these different topics. So for example, crop rotation. One of the outcomes of crop rotation is hopefully to improve soil organic matter and biodiversity. But really, we're just asking the farmer, are you doing crop rotation? And they check the box. We're not ever looking at, are you actually building soil organic matter and improving soil biodiversity? We go down through, you know, a management plan. So an integrated pest management plan to say, are you reducing your pesticide, you know, your reliance on pesticide, and Bea talked quite a bit about that, about the anxiety around kind of some of these, and the whole idea of that is to reduce our dependence on pesticides, and to also build kind of that soil health. But we don't actually ever measure that. We just measure, are you using fewer pesticides? And so the benefit with BeCrop is we're kind of on the other side of that, where we're able to go through and we're able to say, we actually have things that will measure each one of those. So we're able to measure, what is your soil biodiversity like now? Is it improved over last season, over 2 or 3 years ago? What, are you degrading more organic matter now than you were in the past? Biosustainability. So each one of these has a different metric that can be directly tied back to the activity. So you're not just checkboxing that activity to say, yes, I'm doing all of the activities and therefore I am sustainable. You're actually having a number with those to say, this is where we started, and we are improving. We are moving towards that. so that you can actually hit those 2030, 2040, 2050 sustainability goals that you've actually set. And so we've got all of these that really kind of bring together both the activity and the outcome, so that we're able to look at those together, so that there aren't any kind of, you're not blindsided all of a sudden saying, wait, all of these carbon metrics that we've been looking at, you know, the crop rotation and everything else that we've been doing in order to get carbon neutrality, and now we're finding out that we're not anywhere near carbon neutrality. We can kind of tell that real time how that's going.
And that's a challenge, right? You feel that you're moving towards that, and you don't actually have a benchmark or metrics to see if that improvement's actually happening.
Right. Yeah, because I definitely feel that there are a lot of CPGs that are acting in good faith, that are saying we are really trying to be sustainable, and we're doing all of these activities, but we just don't have those outcomes, way to measure those outcomes until now. And
here's a really great partner that I'm so excited about to share with you on this call, on this webinar. Before we get into it, just want to remind everyone there's a question panel there. If you guys have any questions, don't wait until the end. We'll make sure we'll get to those. But for this section, we want to dive into the case studies of our partners that we worked with, and talk about some of their sustainability initiatives and the outcomes, which we continuously talk about, and hopefully help you see that the sustainability goals are very similar within the CPG world and agri-businesses. And we can also show you how we can help you through and meeting these goals through outcomes. Like I mentioned, Starbucks, their soil health is a cornerstone of their sustainable coffee commitment. And we're collaborating to measure their supply chain resiliency, carbon reductions, and most importantly for Starbucks is farmer productivity, giving back to their partners. You know, this partnership truly empowers every farmer they work with. Many of them who lack the resources, like many other farmers across the world, with the resources like soil testing, which is critical to soil insights and helping them, enabling them to understand and enhance the impact of their agricultural practices. And by grounding their efforts in science, Starbucks is not only advancing global sustainability, but they're also driving meaningful progress in soil health recovery. Would love to share more about Starbucks. I'm sure we will at future webinars, but there are other clients that we work with who have similar goals, and there's some more outcomes that we can share on those. And Jacob, I'm hoping you can talk about one of our partners who is looking at tomatoes globally.
Yeah, so this is one that I really like, because they're looking from the angle of, we want that biosustainability, but we also want to also give something back to our growers. This is a company that has a really long-standing relationship with their growers. Some are decades and decades, partnership, and so they really wanted to be able to give something where it's kind of like we are providing this to our growers as an act of, we're giving something back to you. And that's one of the great things that I believe that this technology does, because it's not only saying we are looking and seeing what the biosustainability is, but it's also saying, here's what you can do specifically to improve that. And so they were looking at, how do we monitor disease risk? Eventually, it's to kind of make healthier crops, but it's also to improve soil health, so that the farmers, the growers, don't see that deterioration in their soil quality, deterioration in yield over time. And so here they were really looking and saying, we want soil health as this foundation, and we want to go in as a partnership with our growers. Yeah, this is another one, again with a major So this is again where they're working with growers that are in potatoes. One of the things that I loved about this is we've been talking a lot about using this in biology and in biological products. I think often when people look at biomakers, or when they used to look at Trace or some of these other companies that look at the microbiome, they look and say, this is to be able to understand biological products. One of the cool things that we were able to do with this with this group is we were actually able to give guidance on crop rotation and cover crop in order to reduce that disease. So it's not just saying what biological products are improving your soil health the most, but it's saying, what practices. So in this case, they were already doing a lot of those check mark that we talk about. They were doing crop rotations, they were doing cover crops, but we were able to say, okay, you've moved the needle in just doing that, but now we can tell you which cover crops work best, and which crop rotation. So as you're going through this crop rotation, if you're growing your potatoes following this cash crop, you're going to see better, healthier soils. And so we're able to kind of move beyond the check mark, to continue to move that needle beyond kind of the basics that they had. And then I think finally one more, and again, this is another one where, so yeah, I guess for time we can skip those last two, but we have done this with several, and every single one of these has a different question and a different approach, but it all uses the same fundamental platform of looking at the microbiome. So for example, Sarah mentioned Starbucks. They wanted kind of both a high level, we want something that we can do across this whole entire supply chain that's going to improve the whole supply chain. And we've had others that are like, well, we want very individualized reports to tell each one of these growers specifically what with their field they need to do. And so it's a wide range of interactions that they're focusing on. But in the end, the benefit is first that we're kind of looking from that World Economic Forum paper that Sarah mentioned. We're able to look and say we're not just doing activities, we're measuring the outcome of each one of those activities. We're putting numbers behind that. And so we're able to see when those numbers are moving and make sure that they're moving in the right direction and find out which practices or products move that number a little bit more than others. Another is that we are able to work back with individual farmers. So it's not just kind of the farmers are reporting, it's a one way, we're checking the boxes to say we're doing all the sustainability stuff, but we're able to give them feedback of saying, okay, these are the things that are working, these are the things that are not working quite as well that maybe we can help you with. And so it's really accelerating their ability to move those numbers and to be able to say we can show the numbers of our sustainability. And so I think those are some of those benefits that we're seeing from each one of these different consumers.
But I think that also is not just about sustainability, it's about the business. They are receiving more money. And this is why they are able to change something or to adapt something into the culture of production, because it means money for the farmer, it means money for the CPG company. So of course sustainability is I think the hardest to implement, but the easy part is that the farmer will have more money and the CPG company also.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, and this case that Sarah just brought up now is we are able to show how you can actually, some of these steps that you can take to improve carbon sequestration in the soils. We can give numbers associated with that based on these models, and then say this is how much value implementing this product, this sustainability, these sustainability practices will bring to you. based on, in this case, it was Europe that has a carbon market that's kind of starting to go. So we're able to actually associate that with an ROI of this is how much you can gain from this.
I'm just going to quickly sum this up because we have some questions that have come in, and I want to make sure we get to some of those at least before we end the webinar. I think it's what we can do with BeCrop is limitless. We have the technology, we have the data. We work with clients, like we mentioned, with tons of different sustainability goals. And it's just a matter of how do you want to measure, how do you want to get started. We do it all from start to finish, which is why I think one of the reasons why a lot of CPG companies and manufacturers like working with us, because we take that pressure off, we take the planning off, we work with the growers, we do the testing, we do the analysis, and we give back on what they're looking for, whether it's really high level from a corporate perspective or giving back to the actual farmers, which is actually interesting because we did get a question that's very similar. Would the CPG client be a customer of BeCrop technology? Does the farmers have access to the insights directly on the platform? Yes, so the CPGs are our clients. We work with them again based on their corporate objectives. We provide a different level of reporting, and a lot of our CPG clients do want to give back directly to the farmers, where they'll have access to the platform. They get reports of their own. They get time with our agronomists. They get to learn about their soil health. We give them advice on what they need to do and what they need to apply, and help them move the needle. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about reports; it's about outcomes. We have another question here. It's a little long. I'm going to see if I can shorten it. How do you measure pesticides, for example? If you go back to the pre-GMO crops for herbicide and pesticide, we use tons of less pesticides now. So basically the question is, how do you measure it from the past 3 to 5 years or even 20 years ago?
So the way that we look at it, we're not really measuring pesticides or pesticide residues. What we're looking at is what is the ability of the community that you have in your soil, the microbiome, to be able to suppress pathogens. And so generally in the past, what's happened is pesticides and a lot of those things have actually made it so that that community has basically almost disappeared. And so if you've got a strong community that can naturally suppress pathogens, then you don't have to worry quite much about applying pesticides, because the soils are already helping the plant to fight those off. It's like the soils are the antibiotic for whatever pest that you've got out there. And so that's generally how we measure kind of the ability of the soils as far as kind of these pests, as fungicides, bactericides, insecticides, nematicides, all of those.
Thank you. Jacob, another question for you. How does the different stages of the growing season affect the results?
Yeah, it's going to have a pretty big impact on the different results. For one of the things that we look at in the microbiome is nutrient cycling, but also the cycling of different phytohormones. How does the microbiome naturally help the plant tolerate stresses or provide phytohormones that improve root growth or shoot growth or all of these different things, and those are going to have different levels throughout the growing season. So there are some points in the growing season where you're going to having a community that is providing gibberellin which is a phytohormone, to the community, and that helps with germination and early plant growth. Early, you'd love to see that you've got a community there that's helping with this by providing some gibberellin, where it might be less effective later in the community or later in the life cycle of the plant. And there are some times when some of these phytohormones, some of these are actually saying, okay, there's a phytohormone switch where it goes from a vegetative to a reproductive stage. And so you want that there. And so at that point, you're kind of saying, we kind of don't really want the wrong phytohormone signals being driven to the plant, because we want to switch over to a vegetate or to a reproductive. We want that grain filling or, fruit filling, whatever it is. And so a lot of it depends on both the crop as well as the life cycle of the plant.
Well, it feels like we just started, but we're already past the hour. We have several other questions that have come in. I promise we'll get back to you through email within the next day or so. Some questions about how do we plan large projects and how do we get started, how many samples we need. We'll definitely schedule some times with you guys and walk you over the demo of the portal and how we plan sustainability projects with other companies. And yeah, and the recording of this session will be sent to you within the next 24 hours as well, so you could watch or forward to your colleagues or friends in industry who you are also trying to promote sustainability and help others do the same. I appreciate Bea, Dan, and Jacob for your time and for being here and sharing your wisdom and insight and passion for soil health with us. Thank you, everyone. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and we look forward to hopefully hearing from you and working together.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Take
Goodbye.
care.